Hi, thanks for joining me today. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Louis Amaral. I wanted to open my final learning culmination video with the graphic that expresses how I feel. I've been studying project management theory and methodologies for almost 2 years. I've had very little time to act on the information that I've learned in this course. For myself, I need to remember that PMI 12 Principles of Project Management Code of Ethics are what makes me a professional project manager. If I hold to these principles and ethics, even if I encounter problems along the way, I'll be staying true to the core of my personal project management teachings. My master in project management experience has been a project within itself, from initiation, planning, executing, controlling, and closing. First, just to highlight this slide here, project management principles and ethics don't just exist in your brain. Project management principles and ethics extend beyond your body into the structure and framework of your projects. You're already influencing the project environment. That means just lead with value. Be true to yourself. Be true to your organization. What you know, how you portray yourself, what you think is going to reflect onto your team. Now, as I mentioned, this whole program has been a project within itself, meaning the initiation phase is where I made the commitment and applied for this program, creating a new personal charter that I would have to follow to complete this program. The planning phase is where I had to break down my current work schedule and other activities, first on a higher level, then on a lower level to adjust my activities to create more time to study. I had to figure out my health, mental, financial capabilities to ensure this program was within my scope of successful completion. More or less, I had to think ahead to ensure that I'd be able to complete this program without suffering fatigue and have the ability to repay my tuition. This was my first attempt at creating a risk register and learning how to mitigate risk in this program. The execute phase was first day of class. I had to execute my decision and be prepared to work every day to reach my goals. I set my goals by semester to help handle the stress of looking at enrolling in a master program where I've changed my majors from business communications. I tracked my grades, my emotional, physical, financial state to determine if I was successful and to forecast my future success. Control phase. Once I found my comfort zone and had determined I was being successful, I had to settle in for the long haul and maintain a balance in all of my affairs. And finally, the closing phase is closing out with this culminating learning experience video. I've created a closing report and ended or closed all relationships with instructors by thanking them for the time, showing gratitude for their help and hard work in making me the project manager I am today. That will be on the final slide of this. Okay, so my culminating learning experience, or this final video to complete my master's program in project management, has been broken into several parts. The agenda on this screen covers what to expect on this video. I have provided an introduction to my project management philosophy, and then you will see the remaining outline of what's on this video highlighted on this slide. When I started this program, my project management philosophy was to ensure I have the capacity to successfully finish projects that I start and treat all stakeholders with the utmost respect. You can see that on the slide here. That was actually taking from a assignment that I did in PMG 501. You can see the cover page here on the slide as well. I was trained to be a project manager in the field and was never really taught how to look at a project holistically. A good day for me was if I was able to get all my procurement done and have enough work orders created so that the tech would have enough work in the morning. PMG 501 was my first attempt at learning about the true nature of professional project managers and the importance of working with stakeholders to optimize resources and to keep them informed in the project process. In the past, I had been assigned to provide progress reports to my stakeholders, yet I failed to meet many of these weekly deadlines that my reports were due. In my mind, it was a task given to me later in the project, and I felt that since it wasn't assigned to me as a primary task in the beginning, there were more important things to get done. At PMG 501, I learned about paradigms and principles, was laid the foundation for what I based the rest of my project management knowledge off of. I didn't know what a paradigm was. I know when I started this program, they talked about completing it would actually change your view on the world, in project management. And the way I've been able to integrate project management policies and these studies into my personal life, kind of directly relate them together. It does provide more gratification for the program. It kind of intertwines my reality with work, which, work is work. We all have our own reasons to do it, but if you can make it something more than just work, spiritual, more exciting, different levels to it, I'd call that a win. But a paradigm in simplest English can be defined as our worldviews. Its more complex terms, a paradigm is what we perceive as reality based on what we observed, participated in, experienced, and our social and individual knowledge. That's a quote taken from Elizabeth Castillo, one of my instructors in PMG, um, PMG one number another. Okay, now with the paradigms, we learned about some principles of project management. I believed initially that what guided me in my practice was stewardship, stakeholder, system thinking, risk, and change. I told myself I would practice stewardship by always making myself available to help my team members and approach our interactions with courtesy and utmost respect. I will always include my stakeholders and allow their feedback to be part of the continuing improvement process that projects need to be successful. When managing a project, I will break the project into smaller, more manageable parts and treat each part like its own system to better control the project as a whole. I will look at the risk involved in the processes involved in my projects to determine if the risk are worth the rewards. And finally, the change would be looked at as a positive variable in my project management work. I won't assume that I need change. I need to change something because I was wrong. I will assume change is necessary because I know more at that time of the change than I did when I started the project. So moving forward, you'll see here the PMI 12 principles of project management. The next 12 slides will highlight what I've learned about these principles in this program, what they can be defined as, how I could integrate them and these principles into my project management views, philosophies. There may be some best practices I outlined that can be used to ensure the best outcomes. For me, lately, I've been looking at building up my defenses and being more prepared to deal with lies at work, people trying to trick me. I'm at an age group where, I feel there's a different type of treatment towards myself. So it's like they could be trying to walk me out the door to get like an early retirement, and it seems like I constantly have to check people and constantly be on guard to maintain, integrity in the workplace. Just my experience. Um, Now, these 12 principles here are going to be stewardship, teamwork, stakeholders, value, systems thinking, leadership, tailoring, quality, complexity, risk, adaptability and resiliency, and change. All right, so according to PMI, stewards act responsibly to carry out activities with integrity, care, trustworthiness, while maintaining compliance with the internal and external guidelines. They demonstrate a broad commitment to financial, social, and environmental impacts of the projects they support. Stewardship encompasses responsibility within and externally to the organization. PMI would say stewardship includes integrity, care, trustworthiness, and compliance. A holistic view of stewardship considers financial, social, technical, and sustainable environmental awareness. Now, before I started this program, I had no idea what stewardship even meant. Acting with integrity, care, trust, and compliance seems like a no-brainer. In reality, it's something that should be done if you want to keep your job. Highlighting that it is one of PMI's 12 principles. I understand responsibility of project management does help to reinforce the idea that we are working to promote best practices and to be what I would call do-gooders. I often reflect on actions that I've taken at work that I believe that have the possibility for improvement, and I will base these reflections on if I am acting with integrity, care, trust, and compliance. That way, next conversation I have with an employee or a coworker, I could bring it up a level and be that person that you always see sitting in the front office that's acting as a professional, um, you know, not stressed out at anything, not worried about deadlines, bills, family, just got it all under control. That being a project manager puts you in a position where you will need to have the buy-in of both the internal and external stakeholders. Keep in mind that the core characteristics of stewardship can help to ensure the best outcomes. And as I mentioned, it will help to allow your image as a professional to be maintained by both the internal and external audiences that you're working with. All right, so the second principle of project management, according to PMI, is team or teamwork. Now, I've been involved with many cross-functional teams necessary to maintain operations, and I would say that having to work with my own organizations, but outside of my own department, has helped me to understand the importance of how a project manager will have to manage multiple teams with different priorities and different outcomes in mind. Communication is probably the most important concept that needs to be developed when attempting to create a team. Creating a team charter can help to define the roles of what each team member responsibility will be and will help the project manager determine what type of communication plan is needed to be the most efficient and effective at performing their role. Now, in this NPM program, I created my first team charter in PMG 531. On this slide, you'll see the cover. Well, on this page, you'll actually see the last page where some of the important team charter information was created and submitted. Now, this is back in July of 2024. This assignment, we had to gather our team members' names, establish team ground rules, determine team member strengths, responsibilities, and future team meeting dates. Now, I have been lucky enough in my career to be called on to select individuals that were on a temporary employment basis and make the decision to make them permanent employees. But I was never in a role where we started a new project where I had the option to create a team charter. So this was really fun. I really enjoyed it. I could really see how it connects to the project, how it's like a livable document. You can amend it and change it as the project goes on. And it was a lot of fun creating this. But moving forward, if I am directed to create a new team or a new project, I will definitely take what I've learned about the importance and the function of a team charter and apply it. More importantly than performing the administrative work or creating a document of who my team is and what their purpose is, I've learned about the value of diversity in teams. How having many different views to interpret a problem can in reality allow the best outcome to be realized due to the fact that everyone has a unique idea on how to solve a problem based on their life experiences and culture. Yes, it can lead to a more difficult decision-making process and can hurt some team members' egos if their ideas aren't valued as much as others. But as a project manager, your job is to ensure the best outcomes and to secure the safety of your team members, whether that be physical or psychological safety. Learning to steer a team and being able to communicate to show respect to all members of your team is essential to becoming a successful project manager. Stakeholders. It's another word that I had only briefly heard in my studies until I entered this master's program. I first learned about the term or the word stakeholders in my organizational leadership program that I took through Phi Beta Kappa that was offered at the University of Johannesburg, South Africa. I guess it must have some reigniting value in the business world of the higher ups in the workplace, like project managers. I never heard it ever again till I entered this class. Never even briefly mentioned it in my business communications classes. So I was glad to see it again. Stakeholders can be internal or external to your organization. They can be project team members or members of the community, all depending on the scope of the project work being completed. My definition of a stakeholder is someone who is affected either directly or indirectly by the work of a project. In this program, we dove into the value that can be generated by the proper use or management of project stakeholders, in addition to learning how to identify and communicate with them. One of the first assignments that I completed in this program that taught me the application of the techniques on how to understand who your stakeholders are and how to classify them was done on the Shell E&P Ireland Oil Company. Now, I have included a snippet of the completed product for that assignment on this slide, showing what I believe to be my first attempt at stakeholder categorization. It didn't seem too difficult at first, but as we progressed through the course, I started to realize how much work is actually involved in determining who your stakeholders are, how they can influence your project outcomes, and how to prioritize them. In this assignment, we were given the freedom to use our best guesses on how to classify our stakeholders. In a professional project setting, we may need to interview each stakeholder or stakeholder group or poll them so that we can accurately determine who they are. Additional research may be required, such as references, previous projects, anything that will allow us to make the best decisions on who will be an asset to the projects or who will be liabilities. As a project manager, you need to question everything. A well-oiled, productive, and profitable project may not just fall into your lap. You may need to take out someone else's ideas and run with them without little choice. And that's what you'll need to do to be successful. As a project manager, we are given the tools that we can apply to project work, and based on our knowledge of their functionality and our experiences using them, we can learn to steer our projects in the right direction. So value is another one of the PMI 12 principles of project management. Upon reflection of my deficiencies as a project manager, I found that learning to understand value through stakeholder management would be very useful for myself. On this slide, you'll see part of my assignment, Stakeholder Theory and Management, that I completed in PMG 533. This is where the idea of the importance of the correlation between stakeholders and value really started to build a framework for my current project management philosophy. This assignment taught me that aligning the values of the stakeholders with the objectives of the project can help to ensure active participation in the project by the stakeholders, and that through stakeholder management relationships can be created that can help to ensure the best outcomes on your current project and open the doors to future projects. This is where I focused on creating value through the relationships that will lead to getting paid for the current projects that you are managing and the opportunity to continue to manage projects into the future. Now, up until this point, I was really focused on the triple bottom line as a way to measure the value of a project. I assumed that if we were in the green or being profitable, then we were running a successful project. However, there are many obstacles in the project management landscape that can affect the true value of a project. According to PMI, value can be realized throughout the project, at the end of the project, or after the project is complete. They also state that value can be measured in either quantitative or qualitative terms. With my experience in accounting and if the contract terms are being designed so that all things are considered before starting to work on a project, the quantitative value in a project really should be more of a hands-off operation. Watching to ensure that the chosen vendors are providing the best value before deciding to purchase from them, and checking industry pricing to ensure you're charging the correct price may only need to be reevaluated on a need-to basis. That's my opinion, my experience. I'm sure that's different in every project landscape, but that's my experience on it. Now, I've learned that being a professional project manager is about creating relationships and working with your stakeholders to ensure that your outcomes are aligned with their needs and expectations. That's really where I see the value. Retaining the stakeholders' buy-in and your current project work and being able to welcome them to participate in future projects is where I'm focusing on finding value currently through the fourth principle of PMI's principles of project management. All right, moving on to systems thinking. The fifth principle of PMI's 12 principles of project management is systems thinking. For myself, this was a new concept that I hadn't previously studied until I entered this program. Learning how to take a holistic view of a project was introduced to me after I learned how to deal with the complexities of how to navigate a corporate internal departmental structure. Systems thinking also helped me to be more aware of what being flexible and adaptable actually translates to when practicing project management. System thinking will allow you to troubleshoot specific areas of a project and take measures to improve the efficiency of those tasks. And viewing a project as a smaller, manageable parts also may provide the opportunities for you to grow and learn how to fix these areas of project work that you never thought you would have to. That's where I see the flexibility and adaptability being needed for a project manager if they're using a systems thinking approach. Now, it is a great concept, but I also see it as a risk. When working in organizations that are part of large investment groups, a cartel, or are operated just as a large capital investment firm, they may need a project manager to do exactly what they're being told to do and not spend so much time worrying about how one thing affects the other. However, understanding that a project can be broken down into smaller, more manageable parts helped me to realize that so can organizations and corporate hierarchies. The first systems thinking process that I learned in this program was how to be sustainable. Being sustainable was the view that I took when completing my Hayden Ferry Lakeside SunSmart project in PMG 503. It was my first attempt at understanding the full life cycle of a project. This hypothetical project allowed me to understand how one thing affects another, but most importantly, seeing how to integrate the idea of managing your project with a new compliance mechanism, such as sustainability, can be used to meet the needs and expectations of the stakeholders. Most importantly, I learned that through the use of systems thinking that I feel is more important in my life. What happens once the project is complete and you sign off on all your work, right? The fact that a project manager needs to confirm with accounting and the vendors that all accounts are accurately maintained and there are no surprise bills that will show up years later, which could cause a backlash in the credibility of the project, really made me stand at attention. In my case, I worked on the City of Phoenix backflow project. I started to get concerned that a new authority would take over and that they would say that everything we were doing was wrong and then try to tax or remove a protective service that they provided us due to noncompliance with their new standards. Being able to step out of the day-to-day grind of procurement, scheduling, speaking with the clients and technicians to learn about how to view a project as a group of independent systems working together gave me the ability to reflect on each individual contributor to my work and actually determine who was a stakeholder, who was a bad actor, and more or less who had the overall attitude of wanting to help to make the project successful and who didn't. Now, I've learned that applying a systems thinking view to a project can also open up new concerns for myself, being that I'm still learning how to navigate and identify what could be considered as risk in a project. If project controls have been placed into assigned project work, and I think that I may have found something out of place, in reality, it could affect my productivity. And if I'm having to chase down something that was purposely placed there with the intentions of distracting me from my primary directives, then my actions could have a direct impact on the project outcomes. Learning to know when to use system thinking and how to effectively apply system thinking is where I'm currently at in my personal development, taking the time to analyze what pieces of the project is its own system, and if I can make improvements to it, may cost me more money than just accepting the current performance level. In my experience, working as a project manager felt more like being a glorified administrative assistant. No insults or not to be rude or anything there. But upon reflecting at my work, I was responsible for, I look at the current job postings that match the work that I've done, and a lot of them are administrative assistants. The project management roles seem to still be out of my reach. I enrolled in this program because I felt that I needed to understand more of the bigger picture of what I was actually doing based on my job title. I chose to attend the university to be safe, to ensure that I was not only making enough money to pay for my expenses, but to ensure that the safety of my organization, my client, and most importantly, my family. Applying systems thinking to my current role in the workplace is what I can say drove me to pursue this degree. All right, so leadership is the sixth principle of PMI. And according to PMI, a project manager needs to be able to adapt to become a leader that supports their individual and team's needs. PMI also makes a clear division between leadership and authority, pointing out that they're different, but maintains the ideology that leaders need to demonstrate the behaviors of honesty, integrity, and ethical conduct. I agree with them completely on this, and I've always felt that a leader does need to support their team's needs and exhibit qualities that make them attractive to their followers. A leader in project management needs to be able to have the capacity to either be the primary instructor of or have the ability to steer the project team, using influence that is derived not just from the authority of their title, but from the power that they own as a person is essential, especially where organizational framework of positional command structures is not strictly enforced or tolerated. As I dove into leadership in this program in PMG 533, I learned more about getting to know about management and monitoring processes of stakeholders' engagement. This assignment shown in the slide deliverable was a stakeholder engagement plan. This assignment allowed me to understand the importance of being able to understand who it is that they have to lead, the principle that a leader needs to support their team's needs can only be fulfilled if they know what the needs are of the people they are leading. In addition, this assignment helped me hone in my skills and understanding of the stakeholder engagement process, from stakeholder identification to stakeholder analysis and finally stakeholder management. This assignment allowed me to utilize stakeholder mapping tools such as the Mendelow's Power Interest Grid and of course the stakeholder management plan on this slide. I've learned that to be a good leader, you need to be authentic, transformational, but you also need to be legitimate. I will work every day to uphold these values, regardless of if I'm a project manager or cleaning the restrooms at the Greyhound bus station. On a reflection of the process of leadership, I also thought that it might be important to mention that throughout this program, we learned about some techniques used that can put us at risk and how the only defense available against these techniques are to know that they can be used against us for our loss and another's gain. We were taught to take a moment to reflect before making decisions, that even our day-to-day decisions that most of us would just assume are the correct answers should be reevaluated to ensure that there are no psychological games in play. Learning what makes a great leader also helps prepare you to see through leaders' camouflage to help determine if they are authentic or just pulling your strings. I find this very relevant in the project management industry, especially if you're going to be working in a PM position that is a contract position. Having accountants, lawyers, and other professional services in your repertoire to work safely as a contractor can come with a great cost. Doing your due diligence to ensure that your organizational leader, your PMO leaders, your steering committee leaders are all aligned with your values can help to mitigate any escalation of unnecessary incidents or crossing the lines between being a professional or a domestic servant or a contractor may start to gray. Tailoring is the seventh principle of PMI's 12 principles of project management. PMI will remind us that every project is unique and that tailoring a project is essential to project success. For the most part, I would agree with this based on how you may need to manage people, financial and material resources. The access to the needed resources for a project can drastically change without warning. Wars and government sanctions can be a trigger of this. Sometimes there can be a bigger project that's more important with a more firm deadline that will need your help to complete that will tap into your project resources. By tailoring your project and ensuring that it has the flexibility to adapt to current and forecasted internal and external forces that can affect its outcome is most important. What I've learned about tailoring a project has been built upon since my first day in this program. Creating a business plan that outlines what the purpose of the project is, who the team members are, and who are the stakeholders. asking questions about who do we need to complete this project? Is there enough support internally and externally to complete this project on time and on budget? These are steps to tailoring a project. Creating a stakeholder analysis, a risk register, and a communication plan, in turn, identifying the power, interest, and influence of your stakeholders, prioritizing them, weighing the different risks, and creating contingency plans, and determining the most effective and efficient way to communicate are all parts of tailoring a project to ensure best outcomes. In this program, where I first was exposed to the principle of tailoring and the application of it to a project, was in the attached document that's on this slide here for you. This was for the City of Phoenix mural project. This was my first example of tailoring for a specific audience. Although this is something that I consider as an example of tailoring a project for this video, actually applying the tailoring principle to a project would entail much more of the work that I mentioned a few moments ago. But as they say, you've got to start somewhere. And this is where I started to open up and understand that being a project manager, in my opinion, is similar to being a designer. Your ideas need to attract and retain the support of your stakeholders, in addition to being able to complete the project successfully. From my understanding of the tailoring principle, all projects can be tailored regardless if you're using the waterfall approach, agile methods, lean, or Six Sigma. Tailoring a project is to look at each characteristic of the project, evaluate if it's the best choice, and then make the final decision on its implementation into the project plan. Quality is the 8th principle of the PMI 12 principles of project management. Quality can be defined as satisfying stakeholders' expectations or ensuring processes are effective and efficient. When measuring quality, you compare the product or deliverable against other similar kinds. PMI describes their 8th principle as follows: maintain a focus on quality that produces deliverables that meet project objectives and align to the needs, uses, and acceptance requirements set forth by relevant stakeholders. In this program, quality was discussed as measurement for success. Quality is something that can be determined or should be determined before the project starts and should be set as a goal for successful project completion. Depending on the scope of the project work, quality can be measured as customer satisfaction, schedule adherence, or even as CPI, cost performance index, which shows how efficiently resources were used. If you are running a production project that creates a usable good as a deliverable, then quality can be measured as the adherence to the tolerance level of the standards that were approved at the start of the project. I believe that quality of a project is determined mostly by what the client is willing to pay for. Everyone wants to and should follow best practices that are determined by the organization to satisfy their clients. What I've seen in my experiences is that some clients have a quality standard that they use to sign off on the work as being complete, but the organization that is hosting the project wants to sort of make a game out of it and will constantly come up with a reason that the expected quality level can't be reached. They in turn tell the project manager that they can't tell the client the real reason as to why the quality is deficient. This is forcing the project manager to lie and toxify a business relationship, and more importantly, leading the project manager into the idea that lying is okay, which in my situation completely throws off my moral compass. I start to behave like I'm back on the streets instead of at work conducting legitimate business. Now, I am a believer that if you can't get the quality right after the metrics have been determined, please stop, fix it, try again, see if you can get it right. If it's not possible, figure out why a contract was signed when we aren't able to satisfy the customer's needs. And let's try and stop our salesmen from making deals that they can just transfer their risk over to a project manager who has to clean up their messes. And I do apologize for the negative connotation in this part of the presentation. These are my experiences, things that I've dug up and discovered through my use of these 12 principles. It really has helped me out a lot. Quality to me is the end game of all the work you've done. No matter what you have done, your quality needs to be aligned with your stakeholders' expectations, or the project could be considered a failure. In this program, I've learned that more projects fail than succeed because of the difference in realities between where the salesman job ends and the project manager job starts. From my experiences, quality is where most of the work I've done manages to fail. So complexity is PMI's ninth principle of project management. Learning how to identify the complexity of the systems involved to effectively manage a project takes the understanding of the application of the tools in a project manager's tool belt. In today's modern project environment, technical advances and development of new tools can add layers of complex issues that a project manager needs to know how to adjust to ensure that productivity is optimized. In this program, we've learned how every project is unique to itself so that the levels of complexity will vary depending on the scope of the project work. Being able to prioritize what issues need to be broken down and analyzed should be something that a project manager aligns with the complexity of the project. As I've gone through this program, I've learned that there's a lot of software that needs to be used for project management. Learning how to use that software is part of the complexity of the project. You're going to deal with different workers and different trades. You also have to deal with different internal departmental complexities. Learning how to be cross-functional and align all the work together to be efficient as possible can really make you be a desired project manager. It does take a lot of time to figure it out. If you stay in one industry, it should be easier. You should get better and more efficient at it. As a project manager in this class, what I've learned is that there's many possibilities to be a project manager. You could be like a software project manager if you have that background. You could be like engineering project manager. It really just depends on what your kind of core education is or core skills are, and then you can run with it from that way. All right, so moving on here, we're going to talk about risk. So risk is another principle that we covered in this course. So there is a trade-off between risk and rewards. Learning what your risk tolerance level is may take time to discover. In this course, we use a tool called Risk Register to determine what the probability of a risk is. Determining the probability of a risk and what type of contingency plans need to be created to help mitigate these risks are part of the project planning phases. Being effective and efficient requires to have a firm understanding of the risks involved in your project. Risk is very important. As a project manager, you have to make that decision what risk you're going to take. Is it worth the rewards? Are you looking at profits? Are you looking at safety? My biggest risk is going into companies that have different trades and they all have different unions. I've learned that recently. It makes it very competitive to a fact where it sometimes creates an illusion that it may not be safe to work. Everyone's fighting over kind of like a pool of money and benefits and resources, and everyone wants their hands in it. It can be challenging to sort it out. There's risk for me personally as a project manager. Maybe getting to the job site is another thing you have to worry about. Staying at home could be a risk. There's a lot of technical risk with hackers, security issues, um, confidential priority information being exposed. Insurance is good to have to cover some of those financial risks. Of course, there's unforeseen things that can happen as well that you might want to just have those contingency plans available for to help cover that risk. All right, so adaptability and resiliency. Learning to be adaptable and resilient are two very important skills that project managers need to be able to master to handle multiple projects or to move from one project to another. It can be difficult to understand all the work that will be needed to be done on a project at the very beginning. Being able to create a work breakdown structure for a project does help to get the project moving in the right direction. All projects are unique. Having skills to adapt your projects as you progress to meet your stakeholders' needs and expectations will make your projects have a higher probability of success. Once again, we talk about adaptability. You may go into an organization that you have to align your values and your kind of core project plans with. It may be difficult to understand why you're doing it. You may have to be able to push back your objections and figure out, should I just do what I need to do? Is like a test, what's going on here, types of situations. You can use your gut a lot of times, just kind of roll with it and figure out, is this an acceptable way to adapt the project to the needs of the stakeholders? Resiliency is about the situations where when you get pushed back, can you come back? Do you have the ability to just get right back on track? But in my opinion, I don't know if resiliency is always good benefit. You want to be resilient to a certain point, but you don't want to just keep pushing forward, pushing forward, pushing forward, pushing forward. You may burn yourself out. You may be using too many resources and applying those to a client or a stakeholder where they're kind of overusing you. You want to be realistic with your resiliency. If it's your first time working with a client, especially, they may try to like take advantage of you if you don't really have a lot of experience in the field or understanding of what the value of a project manager is. It's just important to stay in communication with your clients, be firm with them, and understanding that, we're able to provide you with a certain level of service. And pushing beyond that is a little challenging sometimes. And if they're consistently trying to push you beyond and move up your level of service, you may want to go ahead and look at having a meeting and renegotiating contracts. Change. So this is the one I like the most. All right. So an agent of change is what some may call a project manager. From my understanding of this title, it does represent the fact that project manager roles are not always well defined and that they may be required to create their job roles based off of specific unique processes that are aligned with each individual project. Being a project manager in the world today also requires constantly updating processes to ensure that quality of standards are met and maintained at current industry levels. So on this one here, I have a little snippet here of one of my artifacts, and this has to do with change. This has to do with like updating the project baseline. Um, it was a fun little project. It taught me how to manage scope change, and it's very important. A lot of times you think it's working right, you think you're doing good based on what you have been told to do, um, and you just continually to work that same process. However, your project management officer or your steering committee may have other projects they're working on, and they may have been directed to provide instructions for you to change your processes. However, that information may not have been passed on to you in enough time. It's a busy world out there. I mean, there's a lot of people trying to get as many projects done at once, and sometimes communicating directly with the client instead of getting your information through your committee or your project management office will work a lot better. It is a little more risky. You do need to have your core values and ethics in place to be professional, to ensure that you're not damaging the good name of the business. Um, Change for me, it's difficult to kind of figure out if I should listen to someone else or if I should do it myself. Um, you know, the jobs I've had in the past, like a change order, all it was me sending an email to somebody saying, hey, we're gonna make this change in the process, or the cost of the material went up. Uh, we're gonna change the price of the material with the client, things like that of that nature. All right, so we're gonna talk about the PMI Code of Ethics. Now, I've gone to PMI meetings. I volunteered for them. I knew nothing about them originally. They seem like a great organization of people. I've had some conversations with them to share stories about their backgrounds, where they got their degrees from, where they got their PMPs from. There's a lot of different stories. Some of the people I've met are around my age group, so they'd explain to me how PMI and PMP didn't exist when they first started doing project management. So they kind of rolled into getting those certifications, and it's helped them along the way. They got to constantly get them renewed. They've got to do the continuing education plans. I'm sure they do good in the professional setting. I'm hoping one day to further this education, possibly get further certifications. Achieving this project management master's degree will kind of just help me reinforce the value of the work that I've been providing, the work that hopefully I can do in the future, and install the confidence and trust of others that I have the ability to complete the jobs on time and on budget. Now, as we look at the PMI Code of Ethics, we do have responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty. Ethics for a project manager are important to ensure, again, to maintain the integrity of the project environment and to uphold the professionalism of your field. Ethics are a very important part of business. Being unethical can have a negative impact on business relationships and cause future potentials for revenue to be impacted negatively. The PMI Code of Ethics includes responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty. PMI suggests that non-members who hold PMI certifications, non-members who apply to commence a PMI certification process, and non-members who serve PMI in a volunteer capacity should align their values with the PMI Code of Ethics. I personally first learned about ethics studying business. I was doing corporate taxation, and then I moved on to corporate ethics. It's really common sense, right? I mean, you're working in a business environment where you are working under the umbrella of someone that's providing you money to, eat, live, survive, entertain. It's not your money, it's their money. And you want to be responsible, respect, you want to be fair to everybody, you want to be honest, because typically the people that are above you, that's how they are. So you want to reflect their image in all your work. You want to make sure that you just trust them. It's kind of almost like if you see someone on the corner saying, "Hey, give me $20. I'm a vet." Okay, I support veterans, right? And then he runs around and he jumps in a Corvette, and you're like, "Oh, I thought you were like a veteran," and he's kind of laughing as he drives down the road. Um, you've got to figure out the people you're dealing with. Are they honest as well? Are they going to have these ethics? Are we going to be able to continue a relationship here, or are we going to have to move on? Okay, we're on responsibility, which is the first ethical principle of PMI's Code of Ethics. According to PMI, taking ownership for the decisions we make or fail to make, the actions we take or fail to take, and the consequences of that result. Um, it's our issue. We need to be responsible for that. As a project manager, you may be required to take on responsibility of dealing with labor, materials, creating work orders and processes, and managing that to run your project efficiently. This class has shown me what tools I am responsible in understanding and how to apply them in the field of project management. It's also the project manager's responsibility to stay current of any updates in the field of project management. Part of being responsible, of course, is that continuing education. Um, Now, I enrolled in this program just to kind of learn a little bit more so that as I develop in my career, I can have more job enrichment, satisfaction, maybe kind of stand up straighter, have that degree or those, couple extra credentials at the end of my email signature. A lot of processes in the world today and in the environment, they're already standardized. So you're just doing a lot of this all day, which I like to call kind of pencil whipping or whatever it is. And you're learning to just kind of go through the same fields over and over again, doing repetitive actions, just day to day stuff. When I really started working in the corporate environment, I worked in a call center. So I was doing a lot of grinding, working really hard, really high stress level for me. Um, my risk tolerance wasn't really that high. I wanted to follow, align my core efforts and values with that of my HR team, and stay kind of firm with what their best practices were. What I discovered a lot, because I worked around similar professionals that were doing the same jobs, is there was a lot of, I guess, cutthroat or backstabbing going on in the field. The clear resolution of, was it the time that I'm in the position does it take for me to reach their goals, or is it staying firm and following the original direction from HR going to make me do it? I kind of went the other way a few times where I'd see the top performers in the environment and I would ask them, because this is what I was directed to do, ask them, like, why are you so good? And they would just tell me, well, because I do it this way. And it would be the wrong way, right? And then I would do it. QM would come over and say, why are you doing this? Blah, blah, blah. We need to have a talk. Well, Jason or whoever, Janelle, these guys are doing it this way. And they seem like they're doing really well. Um, it still didn't really work. I still wouldn't make it. I figured if I just kind of drive in there and keep on it, I could get to their performance level and get to their commission levels. Um, Eventually, just gave up on certain jobs. With this job here and project management, especially, I do understand that there's definitely responsibility on making the correct decisions. Now, in times of emergencies, you may need to kind of override your basic process of thoughts to understand that you're going to be limited to what resources are available. You're going to have to be responsible and come up with the answer as to why you made that decision. Was it the best decision? Do you stand by that decision? And the stakeholders, sometimes they're either going to have to understand or they're just going to have to move on to something else. All right, respect. The older generation that I'm with, a lot of times, one step above me, they have a firm understanding of respect. I don't quite see eye to eye with their version of respect. They think because of the work they've gone through and the efforts they put in and everything they've sacrificed, that they have immediate respect and they deserve respect. You know, and I know it's an essential skill that a productive project manager must be able to exhibit to ensure the best outcomes. In this class, I've learned that there are a few ways to ensure that you gain the respect of your stakeholders. Being able to provide peace of mind that a stakeholder needs and expectations are met, and that you're able to facilitate their desired results will always help you gain respect of the fellow stakeholders. It's kind of like tit for tat. You go into an organization, maybe they say like, "Hey, here comes a greenhorn. Let's have a good time with them. Let's, break them in,
have some fun, right? But you're thinking, I'm here to work. Here's my values. This is who I want to be, and you kind of follow along with them. And then once again, you have your boss come up to you. Why did you do that? Or why what was someone else's opinion here? Someone I should respect in your organization. And they just start making like little tick marks, completely going down until you completely might lose complete respect for an organization and the stakeholders involved, who you had really high values for, may become just bad company. You really want to try your best to respect people and their values, but you also need to understand that if you are the same person and you haven't changed and they're still not showing you respect for who you are, again, it may just be time to kind of move on and see if you can find another group of people to kind of work with whose values of respect align with your values. Now, it's not about job abandonment or leaving any type of open projects or anything like that. It's about truly trying to find a job that you're comfortable with, you're satisfied with, one that you can come home with respect for yourself, for your family, knowing that you're doing a good job further for the communities. Um, there's certain things that you definitely want to respect, money, materials, labor, all your baseline resources that you have available in your job. Um, Values and respect. I mean, it's not really you treat them like how they treat you. You just want to stay firm, be yourself, and respect that if you're waking up and going to work every day and making it home safe, that everything's okay. Fairness. All right, so fairness is another one of those PMI codes of ethics that helps you to provide a professional attitude and appearance, um, for the project manager role. Excuse me. Being fair as a project manager can be difficult, especially if you have stakeholders with conflicting expected outcomes. PMI would say that ensuring that resources are equally provided could be considered fairness. Resources such as people, money, reputation, safety, and environmental resources need to be considered when fairly distributing among the project team members. Fairness is another topic we talk about, right? Um, it's like equal opportunity employment, proposals. There's different fairnesses that I look at as far as receiving a job offer based on like the conditions of employment, receiving a project, based on is it fair depending on what types of, conflicting roles may be involved. I look at fairness in project management being that, they kind of look at the total package and they kind of figure out, what's your standard of living, what's your education level. If we offer you this job, is it fair to you? Is it going to make you able to put food on your table? Is it going to make you be able to pay back your bills? Are you going to be able to support yourself, your others? Or are we going to offer you this job just so you can gradually kind of slowly think you're working every day, but actually you're digging yourself a deeper and deeper hole? It's fairness too is also when you're dealing with international clients, right? So you're thinking here in the United States that the laws and the rules that you're practicing are fair here. Maybe they're not for your client overseas. It's really important to understand the backing of your project, financial resources, so they can consider the value of kind of like the exchange rate that's involved, versus what the profits are. And considering we work in an environment today where there's many genders and much diversity, you want to understand what's fair to them too. We talk about the cancel culture. Other individuals that are younger than me and how their attitudes reflect a certain type of personality. Generation X, how do those people behave? Deciding to let their true identities be exposed in the workforce, are you going to say, well, that's just because they're this group or they're this group? You know, you can try to blend it together. Fairness, respect is definitely involved with the fairness, how we treat others. Uh, Natural resources again are another talks about fairness. I know in my organizations they kind of look at you. Are you riding your bike to work? Are you walking to work? Are you driving 46 miles to work in a lifted truck every day? And then they'll kind of look at you and go, is it fair for us to make offers to someone in this positional awareness of the resources that we got included in our environmental awareness, if we're an organization that's going to support any type of sustainable actions. All right, so we're coming back to honesty. This is very important for me. Okay. Now, honesty is the last code of PMI code of ethics. Being able to understand the truth and being able to communicate the truth about all matters involved in project work help to round off the project manager's image and can help to ensure that stakeholders are able to trust work that is being completed by the stakeholders. Okay. So when you're talking about the stakeholders trusting each other's work, you're talking about more of cross-functional teams. Are you part of this? You're doing your best to be honest. And then we talked about the stakeholders that are kind of like the devil advocates or the ones that are looking to destroy your project, and what the allowance is for those individuals to be part of the workforce and your projects. And are you the one that needs to say, hey, can you stop? Or are you the one that needs to reevaluate your organizational structure and go, why is this stakeholder involved in this? Is he a true stakeholder? Is he kind of like a covert agent? Why is this person here? And if you kind of like have a buzz or you kind of feel that there's kind of an issue with one of the stakeholders and you approach maybe your head officer or someone above you and try to get the truth about this person, and then they're not honest about it, it can add a lot of stress to your work. It could be inefficient, waste of resources, waste of time. It could also cause a lot of delusions, stress, create collusional opportunities that you can move forward with to kind of press the issues as to why are you taking this approach that this is my problem when I've already advised you that we do have internal issues where your employees or stakeholders are not fairly competing against each other and kind of using you as their tool to kind of, maybe steal a contract from you, give it to their cousin, whatnot.
Okay, so as discussed, the PMI 12 principles and code of ethics are the framework for the behaviors that need to be exhibited to be a professional project manager. Moving forward in my career, I will do my best to ensure that I practice these in all of my project management affairs. Learning to balance what PMI defines as these principles and ethics and how others interpret these based on their experiences and backgrounds is the current area of practice where I'm working on dialing in and using these principles and ethics to my advantage. As I have also discussed, depending on the nature of the project and the stakeholders involved, the best plan of action that I can see for myself to be successful in project management is to be firm with my values and try not to let others sway me over to the so-called dark side or allow the confusion of working in gray areas to have negative impacts on relations between myself and the stakeholders. Throughout this project management master's program, I have taken what PMI defines as their principles and code of ethics and I've reflected on past experiences to ensure that moving forward, I will be able to promote the best practices by practicing them myself and monitoring the stakeholders to ensure that they are following it suit. During this program, I have worked on becoming a better person who can understand the diversity and value of the many groups of various stakeholders and how to best apply the PMI 12 principles of project management and PMI code of ethics to ensure that the best outcomes of my project management work. I am excited to complete this program and to work on furthering my experiences and abilities to manage projects in the most effective and efficient manner possible. Right, here is my short-term goals in the PMI principles and ethics. That's applying them to my daily situations in project management. Now, taking on a new discipline and changing majors was challenging. That was a result undertaken of me wanting to be prepared for opportunities that present themselves that I could take advantage of without having to worry if I wasn't qualified enough to at least sit down and interview for these positions. Excuse me. Having had taken breaks in my education after earning my associates, then my bachelor's, and then working on my master's has given me time to understand the value of achieving each degree, applying it to the real world of work, and making an attempt to adjust my mental framework so that I could fit into my new roles while understanding the reasons I was selected for these positions. Albeit most of the material that I have studied in school gave me a general understanding of these principles that have been built upon each other and would need to be tweaked depending on whichever company I worked for or whatever project I was a part of. So this slide does have my short-term goals and PMI principles and ethics. Firstly, I would like to work on learning on how to integrate my new thinking processes into the working environment. This should help bring me up to pace with others around me so that I can be an effective project manager regardless of the type of project work that is being completed, and allow my project team members and stakeholders to see me more of a colleague instead of a newbie. Secondly, I will work on practicing the integration of my studies in science and arts of project management to ensure accurate use of my skills, learning not to be taken advantage of through the use of trigger words or tactics that I think are in my own best interest. Having been around individuals when I started this program that knew industry jargon made me believe that they had sort of a buy-in or interest in what project or work I was a part of, only for me to learn later that they were really only looking out for their best interest. Was a tough lesson for me to have to learn. Understanding the importance of keeping project information secure, even when asked, because others think they have a better way to do things, has been another real world lesson that I'm sorry I've had to learn while in this program as well. Lastly, given the competitiveness that I've encountered since enrolling in this program, my last short term goal is to ensure sanity, if it's possible, working in the field of project management. Okay, so we are on my long term goals in the PMI principles and ethics. The first one is to maintain financial stability using the skills and knowledge earned with my master's in project management degree. My hope is that if I can hold firm to the PMI 12 principles of project management and ethics, I will become a valued asset to the project management community that will provide for me the feeling of security that I've always longed for and will provide for me the peace of mind that my financial affairs will be manageable so that I can go to work every day with a positive outlook. Secondly, I will work to find opportunities to teach others that the tools and methods of project management that I have learned will work and make their jobs more effective and efficient. I hope to share my knowledge with others so they can achieve a greater job satisfaction so that they're content with the work they are doing for a living. Lastly, I like to learn to act as a master's graduate would. Now, this is the real work. Most of the corporations I have worked for have put either master graduates or doctorate graduates on silver platters, making them seem as if they were immune to the same rules and regulations that we all had to follow because we only had associate's or bachelor's degrees. Almost as if forcefully pressuring people to keep going forward with their education, and maybe one day they can make the money that is advertised in the job postings or behave in a different manner at work because they have a higher education. I will need to forget almost everything that I have experienced to date and work on being the representation of a master's graduate that I would have always believed would be fair and an accurate representation of what a master's student should be. By following the PMI 12 principles of project management and code of ethics, I am 100% positive that I can make the world a better place based on my authentic behavior that I exhibit and not on the salesmanship of someone else's educational institution. All right, continuous improvement. That's kind of what life and education is all about, making yourself more worthy, more desirable. I will work with these 12 principles. I have committed and pledged to align my personal project management work with the PMI 12 principles and code of ethics. This is my own decision, and this is how I work to continuously improve myself and the field of project management. Regardless of whatever role I may work in, these principles and ethics will act as my internal steering committee, my moral compass, to ensure that all the workers' rights have been taken serious, and that if a time comes where I need to report misconduct or inappropriate behavior, my voice will be heard and the necessary corrections in the processes will be made. Finishing up this program, I pledge to use the knowledge that I obtained in this class not only to make my employment project more efficient, effective, and profitable, but to allow me to grow as an individual. In addition, for my continuous improvement, I will purposely practice a PMI principle on a daily basis until I have truly mastered and have a well rounded understanding of what it means and how it affects the project environment, until I've adapted all 12 of them into my train of thought and can behave as a professional project manager. I should be able to exhibit these behaviors without having to second guess what I'm doing or having another second guess what I am doing, and doing what I believe is right and what creates value for a project manager. I intend to read project management books on my own time, whether these are books checked out from the library or books that are recommended to be read by the project management professional community. I intend to create personal projects to see if I can design my own entrepreneurial business. I may try to start up some of these projects on my own or solicit them to project management firms to see if they have the available resources to make a reality out of these conceived projects. Lastly, I will take time to reflect on what I have accomplished and what principles I am not effectively using. And I will take these reflections and see what can be applied to the workplace to ensure the best outcomes. Constant reflection on what could have been done when best results are not achieved will become a secondary activity that I will use to dial in on my personal abilities to practice project management according to the prescribed PMI 12 principles of project management and code of ethics. All right, so this is the final slide here, basically. Now, this is what I'm considering the close of my first project that I have done in project management through school. So this is the final phase here, the closing. And this is where hopefully, if this goes through and I pass, I earn my master's degree in project management. Now, in the beginning of this presentation, I stated that my original project management philosophy was to ensure that I have the capacity to successfully finish the project I start, before I started and to treat all stakeholders with the utmost respect. At the end of this class, my project management philosophy is to learn how to thrive and collaborate with project management professionals so that I can ensure that I am responsible, respectful, fair, and honest with all the stakeholders involved in my project work. Looking forward, I am very satisfied with this program, and I'm still truly excited to dive back into the field of project management to ensure that tomorrow is better and my value as a project manager is equal to other professionals in their chosen careers. Although my background in education may not directly align with the professionals I am assigned to work with, I now understand what the difference between a project manager and a professional project manager actually is. This again is technically the close of this program here. I wanted to give thanks to the instructors and to the university. My gratitude is for the path that was created, for the steps we have taken together, and for what we have done to ensure the best outcomes for my life as a graduate. Although we will all go our own ways, my memories of my teachers and the lessons learned in this program will guide me into the future and has sparked the light at the end of the tunnel that I will use to guide my professional career into retirement. I'd like to thank Dr. Kay Holland, Dr. Emily Mertz, Dr. David Corlett, Dr. David A. Thomas, Dr. Jolene Gupton, Dr. Idris Adolkun, Dr. Ravi Kaluri, Dr. Annika Poli, and Dr. Joan Barnes. May God be with you all, and thank you for accepting me as a student and allowing me to be responsible, treating me with respect, being fair to me, and honest to me in all of our affairs. Go Devils. Have a great life.